In 1972, David Bowie created his most famous persona. The glittering alien visitor, the quintessential outsider, the glam-rocking starman and space Jesus who would blow our minds, Ziggy Stardust. The rise and fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars opens with the track 5 Years, an apocalyptic warning that the world will soon end. On Starman, the 4th track, Ziggy Stardust suddenly appears. There's a starman floating in the sky. There's a starman waiting in the sky. He'd like to come and meet us, but he thinks he'd blow our minds. Ziggy's gift is music. Music is how he will save us. But in the title track, Ziggy Stardust, Ziggy has already changed. The savior starman has himself been seduced by rock and roll. The song, though sung by Bowie himself, is sung from the point of view of the resentful Spiders from Mars, Ziggy's band, who feel betrayed by Ziggy. He took it all too far, they complain, but boy could he play guitar. Ziggy has forgotten his mission of love and salvation. He has become the rock and roll idol. Making love to his ego, Ziggy sucked up into his mind like a leper messiah. But in the album's final track, Rock and Roll Suicide, which I think is one of the best songs Bowie ever wrote, Ziggy seems to have recovered a sense of who he is. And though the song is apparently about suicide, it is also, in a weird way, Bowie's most sublime and unequivocal declaration of love and acceptance. His raw voice, stretched to the breaking, cracks and quivers as he sings. Rock and roll has broken Ziggy. Like so many others before him, he contemplates a rock and roll suicide, the fate of the too quickly famous who couldn't handle their fame. But faced with the end of the world and the failure of his mission to save humanity, Ziggy finds salvation by coming out of himself and seeing and sharing the pain of others. You're watching yourself, but you're too unfair. You've got your head all tangled up. But if I could only make you care, he sings. No matter what or who you've been, no matter when or where you've seen, all the knives seem to lacerate your brain. I've had my share. I'll help you with the pain. You're not alone. We have been examining the idea of the speaker or the persona in a poem, and we've set for ourselves the rule that we should always keep the two separate. We should never assume the speaker in the poem is the poet, but this becomes a very hard rule to keep when looking at David Bowie and Ziggy Stardust. Mostly because Bowie himself seems confused about where exactly the line separating him and his alter ego is. He both is and isn't Ziggy. But most of the songs about Ziggy, like Starman, are written from the perspective of someone looking at Ziggy, as if Bowie were looking at himself from a distance, or from some other point of view entirely, as if Bowie were seeing or imagining himself as others must see him. It's a complex interplay of perspectives that is constantly shifting and never quite stable. That's Ziggy Stardust. No, I'm Ziggy Stardust. No, I'm David Bowie. Actually, I'm David Jones. I'm David Jones. This interplay of perspectives on identity is probably a good thing. We probably need to routinely look at ourselves as if we were strange aliens, to contemplate who we would like to be, to examine who we really are, and to imagine how we appear to others. It's probably best to avoid the messianic self-aggrandizement. These are still valuable skills when it comes to self-awareness and self-creation. For Bowie, however, things got a bit messy. He eventually lost that more objective third-person view of himself. Ziggy was seductive, and Bowie began to lose the line between himself and his creation. He became Ziggy. He lost himself in Ziggy. And he found himself giving in to all the evils of fame that had destroyed his leper messiah. Sex, drugs, and ego. So many drugs. All the drugs. My sense of this is that as an alter ego, Ziggy was too close to Bowie. He was too much like Bowie. He had the same weaknesses. Bowie had invented an alter ego that allowed him to indulge some of his own worst tendencies. In fact, it got so bad that he eventually had to self-consciously kill Ziggy before Ziggy killed him. In order to save himself, he had to create a new version of himself, had to replace Ziggy. And he did. Ziggy rose and Ziggy fell. But for Bowie, there was always a new persona to inhabit. Always a new opportunity to recreate himself. Bowie's discography is basically a catalog of a man searching for who he is. Ziggy was his most glittering creation, but it certainly wasn't the last.